I remember my first clay piece when I was about 6 years old, actually. You know, it was in the Children's Museum in Jacksonville, Florida, and I made a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I did that piece, and I don't think I've done a better one since, really. It was 2005, and not that I haven't tried, but I've done some more. But something about the way that one worked out, I learned a lot, and I really felt like it hit something I was shooting for. Looking at a lot of paintings, a lot of Renaissance art, and the stones and the streets and the buildings. At that point, decided it was definitely art, but I still wanted to be practical. I thought photography or graphic design, and then still I was taking photography and all these other courses, and I at some point realized I was spending a whole lot of time in the clay studio, practically living there, and without really sitting down and thinking about what do I really want to do, I was a clay major. To me, it was, you know, just too time-consuming to just be a hobby, and it was such a passion that, you know, just ended up spending all my time doing it. So, anyway, and my years as a studio potter were not easy always. You know, you're making stuff, selling it, making a living. But I survived for 20-something years. But at the point I became a professor at a university, my parents thought, oh boy, okay, he's going to be okay now. He has a real job. And with vessels like this, you've always got the inside and the outside. I mean, those are the two real basic things. And so you've got this interplay between interior space and exterior form. And I like for them to relate to each other, but also be different. Like a lot of potters, I really love the material. And being a potter is a lot about being in love with the material, you know, a real affection for the material. And its pliability, its plasticity for forming it. And so when a piece is fired and hardened, it can lose a lot of that original feeling. So I usually glaze the interior in some pleasing color and then leave the outside unglazed and maybe stain it with an oxide or something. And I like that contrast. And I think that creates a feeling of duality. You know, there's the inside, there's the outside. And you can make several different things out of that idea. But cutting these chunks out is something I came up with after a few years of working and getting so I could throw a pretty precise form. And then I started looking at them and feeling like they weren't expressive enough. You can make just a tiny difference in the diameter or the arc of this curve, and it changes the feeling of the piece. So that's what keeps this eternally interesting to the potter, or these subtle differences you can make. And every time I'd make them, they're a little bit different. You know, I could make a table full of these bowls, and you'd look at first glance, yeah, that's the same bowl. But if you looked closely, each one would be different. distracted between teaching and writing reports and going to meetings. And it's kind of sketchy. It seems kind of firm when you first start working. So it comes out the other end. And now it's happening as well as the outside. And then after it does that a little bit, I kind of roll it and thin it out a little bit more. But I want these pretty thick, because they're intended to be sturdy. And most people will come by and they want one, and I'll just sometimes sell one out of the yard. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I like the idea of going back to the source. And I think with that ancient stuff, that's the way I feel about it. It's going back to the source. Leave. Yeah. And it was too big a group, really, in a way. It was 21 people. And yeah, the year you went, it was a small group.
Yeah.
And this year it's smaller again. I think it's about 6 so far. So. Rid of it and get it out of here. I said, no, please don't. So I grabbed it and got back. So if the trains had stopped working before I hopped on that train to go back to the bathroom, which was a matter of minutes, I wouldn't have gotten there in time. So anyway, I managed to get it back to Tennessee. Well, good for her. I haven't seen her this year, this academic year at all. Good?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us about the concepts behind your work?
Well, like I said before, I think I said it anyway, it depends on which work you're talking about. And every time there might be slightly different concepts behind I could make a table lines or types of work that I do.
And you'd look.
This is
yeah, that's the same
going to. I mean, like the two pieces I was making earlier. The concepts behind that are somewhat formalistic in a lot of ways. I mean, I just like the forms, and they're taken from buildings and natural objects too. Is this in the way?
No.
Okay. And then this is simply a bowl, but you know, made to contain something and made to be full and visually pleasing. And you'll see in a minute here, when I start after this first pull, I'm going to cut some chunks out of the rim. And different. They didn't really say what I wanted to say about the clay and about form, and so So cutting these chunks out of the rim early on and then continuing to pull, it undulates and softens this edge so it no longer looks cut, but it looks like this organic sort of flowing soft clay surface that in my hopes takes people back to the feeling of the clay when it was soft before it was ever formed or fired. And my goal here with throwing usually is to finalize the form as much as possible And then the trimming part, which comes when it's leather hard, is only this very bottom section here. Similar size bowl each time. Cut it loose, and I'll leave it. When I set up Odyssey in Asheville, when I was working there, we got in all these brand new electric wheels right out of the box, you know, and I set them all up, and I thought, I haven't worked on a electric wheel in a long, long time. I should give it a try. And I made this bowl. It was a bigger bowl, and then I stood up and stepped on the pedal, and it went bzzz, and just flew off the wheel in pieces. Don't talk as much, I'll just do it. And you'll see that it's a different shape because it's going to be more like a V instead of a rounded form like that. And this is a bit of a challenge for me because you learn to throw thin. You know, that's what potters train, to throw thin pieces that are lightweight and well balanced and pleasant to the touch and feel and everything. But this one I'm making thick on purpose, and you have to retrain yourself a little bit to leave this thicker. But I started enjoying the massive thickness of things a few years back, and it has to do with going to Italy again, sorry. But you know, the stones in the street and the buildings, you know the massive stones like the Medici Palace and things are really inspiring. And so anyway, this idea of, yeah, things don't have to be thin and lightweight, and sometimes thick is appropriate. Like, you know, a lot of those bowls over there are really thick and heavy. Some of the hand-built ones are too. And this, I'm gonna work on the rim in a slightly different way because I'm really gonna push on the rim to flatten it a little bit, but still leave it irregular. So you can see from the beginning, it's a different shape. Out a little bit, but it's still got a lot of wrinkles in it, so it's still good. There he is. Little spiral I inserted on the inside at the last.
I think
Interest, I hope, and also this irregular reminder of the soft clay on that inside. And it's got some little goobs on it here, but I'll wait to clean those up until it's drier, because if I want to do things. Because as the clay dries, it changes its character and allows you to do different things. So the water content is really important for the creative process. Okay, I think it's probably done. Whereas I thought I'd had a real job all along, even though it is, I guess, kind of an odd thing to do in the 20th century and now the 21st century, to make stuff out of clay for a living.
Okay, so why did you start teaching? What made you want to start?
Oh, I never thought about wanting to start teaching, really, but when you do something like this, showing other people how to do it becomes a natural extension of what you do. And you get asked to do things, you know, like, will you come to a weekend workshop here, or will you come down and do something at the art museum, or, you know, things like that just happen. So yeah, that's how. But I never thought of, well, I did occasionally think about it, but I was way too selfish to be a full-time teacher or professor in my younger years. All I wanted to do is be in the studio, pretty much. So I don't think I would have been a very good full-time teacher, you know, 20 years ago. But hopefully I am now. And I care about my own work and my own research a lot. But I also care about the students, and I really enjoy working with them and seeing what happens over a period of years with students in my area, ceramics, working on their own projects. And, you know, I just help them, you know. It's really, they do what they do. I just try to help them. The tower?
Remember that square piece with the circle design?
So here's another tube. And they're,
A little bit more, or
I could also see what you
going back to the, I didn't want to say anything because we were filming, but
what?
going back to the